Hey there! Welcome back to another review, this time of the 1989 thriller Cat Chaser. Now, I use this term loosely because this is the antithesis of a thriller. In my opinion, this is the anti-thriller, because this film wasn't thrilling in the slightest. This was a boring, dull movie. It should be retitled Scat Chaser because it's chasing shit. Now, the movie, I was curious about this film. In fact, I've had this DVD for many years. And I was curious about it because it's got Peter Weller, it's got Kelly McGillis, two actors that I like. Kelly McGillis was in Top Gun. She was the top chick in Top Gun, one of my all-time favorite films. Peter Weller, of course, is RoboCop. So I was like, hey, this looks interesting. I never heard of this movie. All right, it's an erotic thriller with Peter Weller and Kelly McGillis. Um, Directed by Abel Ferrara, a director that I don't mind some of his work, like Mrs. 45 and King of New York. So I was like, this might not be that bad. But no, it is. It is. It is awful. It is such a atrocious, pathetic movie. Is it as bad as something like The Tunnel or Just Tell Me What You Want? No, not really. But that's not saying much. Those films are total pieces of shit. This is still a piece of shit. It's just not as big of a pile of shit as those other films are. Now, what is much more interesting about this movie and much more entertaining is the behind the scenes, the making of Cat Chaser. I'm going to put in the link down below. I'm going to put a link in the video description down below for a blog post by a former critic, and he actually went in and was able to get interviews with Peter Weller, with Abel Ferrara, with the director of photography, with other people who were involved with the making of the film to create a kind of an article of sorts, but really what it is, it's a collection of interviews. It's a piece that talks about the making of the film and how disastrous it was. And that's a much more interesting story than the story that this film tells. I mean, it's based on a book by Elmore Leonard, who had written books that were adapted into films before, like 52 Pickup and Stick. But I just fail to see how this story would have been engaging or interesting or good enough to be adapted into a film, because the main gist of it is just, okay, yeah, Peter Weller plays a character. He runs a hotel. He plays a character named George Moran. He's a former American paratrooper, Marine, a veteran of the Dominican Republic intervention, who now runs a small beachfront motel in Miami. While searching for a Dominican woman named Lucy Palma, who saved his life in 1965 and gave him the nickname Cat Chaser, he begins a relationship with Mary DeBoya, the wealthy, unhappy wife of sadistic former Dominican general. Mary DeBoya is played by Kelly McGillis. Tomas Milan plays Andres DeBoya, the Dominican general. Moran gets involved in a plot by fellow military veteran Nolan Tyner, played by Frederic Forest, and former New York policeman Jig Scully, played by Charles Durning, to rip off the general, to steal money from him. Moran must elude a number of double crosses as he and Mary attempt to gain her freedom, plus the $2 million of the general's money. That right there is not really interesting enough for a feature-length film. The story, the plot, it's just like, who gives a shit, really? Who cares? And that's like how a lot of the film is. For the first 40 minutes or so, nothing fucking happens. Except you see scenes of Peter Weller working at his motel, handing out keys to guests, watches a Dallas Cowboys versus the Detroit Lions game on TV. And you actually do get to see a portion of it in the film, which that was a highlight. Oh wow, oh cool, old Cowboys and Lions games. Go Cowboys! But then they lose. They, of course, I find out later they lost. Oh, your team won. The Detroit. It's like, oh yeah, whatever. It's just kind of like, why is it even in there? It's just like, you're just watching a game. All right, okay. So yeah, you have these boring scenes where Peter Weller's working at a motel. You have scenes of him cleaning a pool, because he's also a pool cleaner, apparently. He's a part-time pool cleaner and owner-operator of the place. You have just countless scenes of dialogue and talking, and there isn't enough good dialogue there to honestly make the entire experience worthwhile. It doesn't save the film. You have an opening credit sequence that is just laughable because you have this painfully bad dubbing that's done over this flashback footage where you supposedly have Peter Weller's character over in the Dominican Republic, and you have this woman that he's searching for, and she's calling him Cat Chaser, and it's so bad. It sounds like it's like a stereotypical accent from people from a Dominican accent or Asian. It sounds Asian, and it sounds like it's either a guy who's doing like a terrible impression of an Asian lady's voice, or it's a woman who's asked to sound Asian, and it just sounds awful. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's like, Cat Chaser! Get some real good pussy, Cat Chaser! It's just Cat Chaser! Right from the opening credits, you know you're in for trouble because you're like, oh, that's just fucking great. And then you have a score that sounds like spa music. What the hell? Is some guy gonna come out of the screen and start giving me a massage? What the fuck is this shit? This score by Chick Corea, and even the director himself in the blog post series of interviews, he even says it was a piss poor score. And it is. It's a piss poor score. It sucks. It's an awful score. It's just an affront to your ears. So yeah, Elmore Leonard apparently also helped with the screenplay along with James Borelli. Now James Borelli, apparently, he actually helped with the dialogue in Shakedown. Which actually, I didn't know anything about that until I read the article. Not really article, but the blog post interview with the critic who's interviewing a bunch of people who worked on the movie. See what I mean by that article? I just want to read that article again instead of talking about this shitty, boring, forgettable movie. Now, apparently this film originally had a 3-hour-long cut of the movie, and it was then trimmed down to an hour and a half because Vestron Pictures wanted to see if they can get more screens to show the film, because maybe they thought it was going to be a hit. I mean, they spent $6 million on this, which is a lot of money for Vestron Pictures, but it was a huge flop. It was a big bomb. Critics didn't like it either, except for Steve Grant from Time Out. I don't know. He needs to go take a time out in the corner, if you ask me, because I don't know how anybody could watch this film and be like, yeah, that was a good movie. But that's just my personal opinion. If you like the movie, hey, to each their own. I just don't see anything really worth praising about this film. I mean, Peter Weller tries. His performance isn't bad. I mean, him and Kelly McGillis, they do okay together. In fact, I actually like the scenes where they're on screen together. Frederic Forest is fine. Charles Durning is fine. None of the acting is bad. That's not the problem here. It's just the plot. It's just dull. Who gives a shit plot? And it's kind of predictable. It goes where you think it's gonna go. And the only things that really kind of stand out to me are some kind of really intense scenes. Like there's where Frederic Forrest's character, he ends up getting drowned. He gets drowned in a pool, and it was rather ruthless. Or the rape sex scene with Kelly McGillis with a gun, where the general is using his gun as if it's his dick and moving around her body. I mean, that's a pretty uncomfortable and intense sequence. And I didn't mind a few lines of dialogue. There was one near the end when Peter Weller figures out what Charles Durning's character is doing. Figures out he's trying to double cross him and Kelly McGillis, and so you, of course, spoiler alert, you find out he's a hitman, and he's got a gun pointed at Peter Weller and Kelly McGillis, and Peter Weller's calls for 911 on the phone, and Charles Durning's like, well, what are you doing? Yeah, oh, you can't be calling that for me. You know, it's just like, what are you gonna do? Call the cops? They're not gonna believe you. And then Peter Weller just shoots him, and then he's like, I didn't call the cops. No, actually, he says, I didn't call the cops for you. I called them for me. And then he shoots the guy. Peter Weller then shoots Charles Durning a couple times with a gun, and I didn't mind that line because it's like, I didn't call the cops for you, I called them for me. So it was like, I didn't call the cops for me, I called them for you, or something like that. I might have gotten mixed up, but regardless, that was a pretty good line. Other than that, I mean, and the ending is kind of surprisingly happy, because Peter Weller and Kelly McGillis do end up getting away with the $2 million and essentially live their lives happily ever after. So, okay, there's that. But the rest of the film doesn't make up for it. You got some really unerotic sex scenes. Like, there's a sex scene with Peter Weller and Kelly McGillis in the opening of the movie, like near, not really the opening, but pretty close in like the first 20 minutes or so. And it's just one of the most unerotic sex scenes I think I've ever seen. The direction is flat, and there's no passion here. And apparently, from the on the set story, Kelly didn't want to do it, and Peter Weller apparently was having disagreements with her, or they were not getting along with one another. And so it's just a very uncomfortable experience anyway. And also, this is really crazy. It's just, I guess this movie, this experience of shooting Cat Chaser was so torturous and so bad for Kelly that after they finished shooting, she ended up going in her trailer and she shaved her head bald, and she got on a boat and went sailing for 6 months and didn't do any films for a couple years until some like direct-to-video movie. So she like lost her mind. She flipped her lid and was like, and shaved her head and just got the fuck out of there. Just sailed on, just went and sailed away. It's like, that is insane. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. The making of this film is more interesting than the movie. Other stuff is, it was a dangerous shoot. They're apparently, you know, that one scene in the film where Peter Weller and Kelly McGillis, their characters, George and Mary, are talking with each other outside in the motel room, and then there's an explosion on a dock you see in the background, because they're talking side by side like this, and then imagine there's an explosion like back here somewhere. You can kind of see it in the distance. Well, apparently, that was supposed to be a shot where you saw it up close and everything, because the producers wanted to have an explosion in the movie. And, well, there's an error that happened, and it blew up too early, so the cameras weren't rolling. So the only shot they had of this explosion was the shot from far away. They weren't even shooting the explosion. They were shooting a scene with Peter Weller and Kelly McGillis, and there was an explosion in the background. And that was not intentional. And I was like, when I saw that scene, I was like, that's lame. Like, why did they do it that way? And I'm like, oh, they didn't plan on doing it that way. It just fucking blew up. And apparently, it was also really close to being a disaster. It was already a disaster enough as it was, but 10 people could have potentially lost their lives if they didn't get the fuck out of the way before the dock blew up. And you're like, okay, 10 people almost got blown to fucking smithereens on the set, which would have been tragic and awful and horrible. Thank God that nobody got hurt, and when the explosion happened way too early during a rehearsal. There's also somebody who almost nearly drowned at one of the rap parties. I think it was like they were giving alcohol and drugs out, and the guy got high, or he got too drunk, he fell in the pool, and then he almost drowned. So, I mean, it is absolutely insane. And Peter Weller's such a method actor that he was staying in character for the entire production. So, like, people would tell him, you know, try to talk to him and be like, hey, you know, Peter's like, don't call me Peter, my name is George. Call me Moran. I did not know that Peter was such a method actor. But, yeah, it was nuts. Crazy film in terms of how hard it was apparently to shoot the movie, how many dangerous things happened, how many different script rewrites they went through. They even had Elmore Leonard come in, the guy who wrote the book that the film is based on, to do some rewrites, and his version wasn't even accepted because they're like it wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't like the book, and then they're even asking him like, "Why isn't it like the book?" And he's like, "I wrote that thing 10 years ago. I don't remember." So yeah, and apparently, so after all of that, Abel Ferrara didn't even get final cut because the movie got cut to shreds, and there was like some awful narration that was thrown in, which after the fact that the producers wanted Peter Weller to do, but Peter Weller was like, "Fuck that! No, I don't want to do that." And so they got Rennie Santoni from Dirty Harry and Cobra to do the narration in this, which apparently is supposed to be Moran, but it doesn't really come across that way. It just comes across as some random outsider who we never see in the film, kind of explaining things to the audience because the shorter cut of the film doesn't make any sense. So, and the narration is just flat and just it's just about as boring as the film itself. So Rennie doesn't add anything to the film. So you got this shitty narration. You got this boring ass fucking plot that goes nowhere. You don't give a fuck. Who gives a shit? You have these two leads, and Kelly McGillis and Peter Weller who don't like each other, and they have a little bit of chemistry, but not a lot because it just seems like they just don't like each other. So there's not really much of a chemistry here. It was just one of those things where they're two good actors, and it was nice to see them work alongside each other, but there wasn't any passion. You have unerotic sex scenes. I mean, this is marketed as an erotic thriller, and it's not erotic, and it's not thrilling. And, it's just, there's some decent cinematography. The director of photography, he made the film look nice. It looked good, by Anthony B. Richmond. And, like I said, the performances were fine, but they didn't have anything to work with. And Abel Ferrara's direction is okay. It's mediocre at best. There's nothing amazing about the direction in this. And it's just a slog to sit through. It is such a slog to sit through because there's not a lot of thrills, there's not a lot of action, there's mostly dialogue, and I honestly, I can't even believe that there was a 3-hour cut of this. That must have been torture to sit through. I mean, it was torturous enough just to sit through this. I can only imagine if I was trying, I had to sit through a 3-hour cut of this fucking shit. But anyway, yeah, there's like this one scene here that's pictured here where Peter Weller like goes in and like beats some people up with a pool cleaner, and that was an all right little bit of fisticuffs with Peter Weller, but does it save the film? I mean, I also remember this movie's so incompetent that they were so rushed that there's a scene in it where Frederic Forest is talking to Peter Weller alongside, around near his property at his motel in Miami on the beach somewhere. And a gust of wind goes by and blows off Frederic Forest's hat when he's talking. And Frederic clearly pauses and is like freaked out and puts his hat back on. And that was absolutely not planned. You can tell. And Abel Ferrara just left that in. He's like, "Fuck it. This is the shoot from hell. I'm not doing another retake. Fuck it. The wind came in. It blew his hat off. Whatever. Fine with me. Leaving it in." So, yeah. Cat chaser. Yeah, more like ass chaser, which is actually a line of dialogue in the film. Ass chaser. What are you, an ass chaser? Ha ha. Yeah, this is a piece of shit. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was a piece of shit. Like I said, it's scat chaser. And when people say they're chaser, like a little drink, yeah, it's a scat. Animal shit right in a glass, and this film is making you drink it. Anyway, yeah, I don't know what else to say about this piece of shit, except it was rated out of 5 stars. fuck, man. I mean, I completely forgot about most of this movie already. Uh, it's not as bad as Just Tell Me What You Want or The Tunnel. So I guess I would give it 1 star. It's a typical 1 star flick. It's poor. It's a piss poor, awful, shitty, boring, forgettable movie. But, there's some decent performances by the cast here and there. The direction is adequate enough. The cinematography is good. There's a few lines of dialogue I didn't mind. It was kind of fun to see old vintage Dallas Cowboys game footage. But really, it's just not a film worth chasing, let alone a film worth watching. So if they made a documentary about the making of the movie, then I'll watch that. But yeah, fuck this garbage. Anyway, thanks for watching my rant and review on Cat Chaser, and I will see you guys later. See ya.